Hi friends, Dr. Lewis here. Today we are going to be working on this learning target. I can identify and draw points, lines, line segments, rays, and angles, and recognize them in two-dimensional figures. So this is going to help us meet this standard, which is 4th grade geometry, and it's the A standard, and it's the first standard in the geometry grouping of standards. So what we're going to do in today's lesson is we're just going to go over what each one of these geometrical terms means. And what we're going to do is we're going to identify and draw them. So if you want to grab a sheet of paper or a journal or something where you can write all of this stuff down, it's going to help you a great deal in this week's math lesson. So we're going to start with our first one. We're going to identify and draw a point. Now a point, you're probably going to be familiar with what it looks like, but it's completely different than what you probably think it is. So I'm going to write here point, and I'm going to draw a picture of a point. Are you ready for this? There it is. Now you're probably thinking, Dr. Lewis, that looks like a decimal, or that looks like a dot, and you're right. But the thing about a point is an exact location. And here's a really interesting and kind of kooky fact about a point. It has no size, only location. So it's an exact location. There's nothing to do with size or shape. It's just a location somewhere. Now, the more figures from this that we draw out, the more that a point is going to make sense to you. But just remember, a point is location. So this word location, really, really important. That's what a point is. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Let's move on to lines. Now a line can take on many different forms, but it always looks the same at each end. Now we've talked a little bit about this in math class. Do you guys remember what it means when you have arrows on both ends of a shape that looks like this, or a line? That's right, it goes on in both directions without end. So a line is something that looks like this, and it can go up, down, sideways, left, right, diagonal. A line is just a set of connected points that continues in both directions. And this is really important, without end. Now I covered up the rest of the words that were in this definition because it kind of gave away the other figures that we're going to be talking about. So just remember, it's a set of connected points. So there can be points all along this line, but if it goes in both directions without end, that's what makes it a line. It can have a point on it, but if it goes in both directions without end, it's a line. Now, this particular line, we can name line, let's name this line A, B. And so the symbol for line is pretty simple. You take the name of the line, which is the two letters that make up the line, and then you draw a line on top of it. So that's what this symbol means. That symbol means line. Great. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This next one we're going to be looking at, let's use pink. We're going to be looking at line segments. So a line segment. So a line segment looks like this. what do you notice about points and lines that you can see on a line segment? So I'm going to draw my line segment. It's kind of like that. Remember, just like a line, it can go up, down, sideways, diagonal, left, right, vertical, horizontal, whatever you want to do. It's a line segment either way because it looks like this. See if you can take what you know about points and lines to see if you can figure out what a line segment is. Pause the video and see if you can figure it out. All right, so a line segment is the set of all points between two end points. That's what these guys are. These are the end points. And what that means is the set of all points, there can be like 15 points, but it doesn't go along in either direction. It doesn't continue on in either direction. So it's like a chunk or a part of a line or a segment of a line because it does not continue on in both directions without end. It has end points. So that means it stops here and it stops here. So a line segment is the set of all points between two endpoints. My lights are flickering. Okay, so if we were going to draw the symbol for a line segment similar to a line, we'll say this is line line segment CD because this is point C and this is point D. We would just name this line segment CD, and then above it we would just draw a line segment. We don't need the dots here. I want to make sure that doesn't look like an O. It's a D. And it does not go on in both directions, so we do not have the arrows. So that's a line segment. It's a chunk or a piece of a line. Now we're going to go on to the next one. The next one is rays. So here is a picture of a ray. I want you to examine this ray for a second. These rays, excuse me, and I want you to see what it has in common with lines and line segments and points. How would you define a ray? So a ray is a set of connected points that continues in one direction without end. One direction. So a ray has an endpoint, but it continues in one direction without end. So for this particular ray, we'll name this ray E, and we'll say it's got a point right here named F. So this ray is named E, F, and the symbol would look like that. You would only have one side with an arrow because it only continues in one direction without ending. It has an end point. So there's your ray. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to talk about the last figure on our list. We're going to talk about angles. Oh, you can't see that. Talk about angles. Now, thanks to our amazing number corner that we did with our calendar a couple months ago, we've been exploring angles a little bit. So these should not be too challenging for you. So here's an image with a bunch of angles on it. These are probably super familiar to you. But the definition of an angle is the figure formed by two rays or line segments that share an endpoint. So if it's two rays or two line segments that share an endpoint, here's their shared endpoint, right? We could have one line segment going in this direction and another line segment going in this direction, and that's their shared endpoint. Of course, those could also be rays. So there's the shared endpoint. Here's one ray, and coming off the same endpoint, there's another ray. So it's the figure formed or created by two rays or line segments that share an endpoint. The figure formed by two rays or line segments that share an endpoint. That piece is really, really important. Now, in a future lesson, we're going to talk about all the different types of angles, which, let's be real, you know all of them already because we've talked about them already, but this is going to be great review for us. So let's go ahead and give these angles some names. So let's give this angle the name, let's say GH. So this would be angle, we'll name it GHI. So we use the little angle symbol to show that it's an angle. And we'll name this one KLM. And we'll name that one angle KLM. So here are the symbols for line segment, for ray, and for angles. You're going to see these symbols, these words, these definitions, these figures pop up in your Zearn lessons throughout the week. In our next episode, shall we say, our next video, we're going to talk about the different kinds of angles, which I know you're already really familiar with. So you can either pause on this part of the video to get all of the definitions and study them that way, or you can write them down like I did. It's completely up to you. I hope this is helpful to you all as you're continuing with your Zearn lesson. Remember, this goes with Zearn lesson number 1. I can't wait to see what you do. Best of luck, friends. Have a great day. Bye.